We're back, and that is the summer vacation for the Indianapolis Colts. Off-season program is complete, and boy, it was a busy off-season program, to say the least. I'm Kevin Bowen. We're back, Colts Corner, with myself, Kevin Bowen, and Eddie Garrison. Mr. Garrison, good afternoon, in what is seemingly the busiest month of June already.
Oh, yes. Good afternoon, KB, between, keeping up on the Colts and producing all the Pacers and Fever games. I can say it's been very busy.
Yes, you are enjoying a very nice night off, I hope, here coming up tonight, and greatly appreciate you making time for us here. We'll probably stick with one a week. I don't know. Maybe we'll get, one every 10-day cadence now that we get into the summer aspect to it. July 22nd, that's when the Colts will report to Grand Park. It'll be an earlier start to training camp. Sounds like one joint session with Baltimore. Sounds like one with Green Bay. The one in Baltimore will be on the road. The one with Green Bay will be at Grand Park. We await official dates and times for training camp schedule, and hopefully that'll come here soon, but I'm not holding my breath necessarily. Today's pod will focus on the minicamp and the takeaways from that, and certainly talk about Carly Irsay Gordon, Casey Foyt, and Kalen Jackson, them meeting the media earlier this week, and some takeaways on that, and then get to Twitter questions.
All right, KB, let's start with that press conference that happened. I forget, all the days are starting to run together now at this point. I believe that was Tuesday. There was one thing that stood out to me the most during that press conference. I'll get to that eventually, but what stood out to you, whether it was something that was said by any of the darters, being Kalen Jackson, Carly Irsay Gordon, or Casey Foyt, or what was there anything that it's just encouraging from your point of view?
Yeah, I'll probably focus on Carly because I do think she will be the lead voice, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, moving forward. She'll be the main decision maker of the three. Still not 100% sure how involved Casey will be. And then Kalen, I think, is mainly, from a philanthropic standpoint, that'll kind of be her forte. But, I guess let's just start with the obvious. They are keeping the team here. I know that's not a slam dunk. And really, just from a family dynamic, it's not a slam dunk. Any family has all three of their children live in the city that they pretty much grew up in. So that's pretty rare, let alone, especially Carly wanting to be in the family business as much as she does. And, we've never really dealt, Eddie, in our market with new ownership. You think about it, you and I I'm 35, you are
26, turning 27.
So we know the Simons and we know the Irsays.
Yep.
It's not like we have had multiple ownership groups, take over these teams. And I think anytime you transition from one ownership, let's just call them an ownership group, even though they are in the family. Let's call them a different era. Anytime you enter a new era, I think fan bases naturally have skepticism with it. And I get that. I guess I'm a little surprised, how much skepticism maybe some fans have. It's look, there's a lot of ownership eras around the NFL that take over a team, and they do it as a hobby. And that's not happening here. There's care factor. There's a knowledge base that isn't given, I think, with new ownership. And in Carly specifically, there's a decade-plus run, if not longer, of absorbing and learning. Frankly, Carly's been much, much, much more present on site inside of that building than her father. I would say over the last, 5 to 10 years. And I thought Carly's answers largely were what you would want to hear from a fan. It's not like she's going to go scorched earth on June 9th, June 10th, bless you. But I thought she acknowledged, we have a standard here. Hasn't been good enough, and we've got things to fix. What will be different about, her versus her father? I think it's more of you're running a business and not as emotional decision-making. I think they'll be very results-oriented in reacting to hires and fires. I think you'll get a little bit more of making decisions with head versus heart. And I'll be very curious how quickly Carly wants to make her imprint on the organization. And, she could have some massive decisions to make as early as, 6 months from now? Hell, maybe even sooner. So I guess the football answer, let's start there, Eddie, on, Chris and Shane. She pretty much said that, they know that it hasn't been at the level they would like, but she still feels confident in them getting it done. You didn't hear, I think, hyperbole like her father has spoken about those two, of whatever, Michael Jordan's missing shots and Don Shula this and, blue chip GM that. Very measured, I thought, in her response, very direct. I think she frankly kind of misunderstood my question. I don't know if you heard that one. I asked her, do you feel like they're tied at the hip? I probably should have done a better job of, speaking to when they were hired and if, do you kind of view GM head coach symmetry in terms of if one goes, both goes? She viewed it, I think, more in the do they get along standpoint, which given the Chuck Pagano-Ryan Grigson dynamic, I understand how she might have misinterpreted that one. The Richardson question and answer I thought was very direct. I think he has all the potential in the world, and if he wants to prove it, he will.
If he wants to.
Correct.
That was the one that stood out to me the most.
Right. And again, I think that to me summarizes a lot of how the organization views him. And I think that's her saying, look, we're not just going to hand you $300 million or whatever that second contract would look like. But, she also threw in that answer. Hey, we drafted him for a reason. We believe in him. He's incredibly talented. It's too early to tell. All of that. I thought her headset answer was really interesting. Optically, that rubs people the wrong way. That might be the question I get asked the most from Colts fans is like, what is Carly Irsay doing wearing a headset on the sidelines? There's no owner around the league that does that. Then you hear her answer on it of like, well, if you were making decisions that involve millions of dollars, wouldn't you want to get the full experience of who these people are and see it up close? And I would argue this, Eddie, the rawest emotions you probably get are within the 60 minutes on game day. You want to see, let's say she's charting down how many times Jim Bob Cooter, for example, comments on the headset. And all of a sudden she's got the end of the year and she's like, wow, Jim Bob has spoken up like 27 times over the course of 17 games. And he's right like 20 of the times versus whatever. Shane is suggesting this to Gus Bradley and it's not going well. I would want to know that. I'd want to know in the heat of the battle how people are reacting and not having to hear it secondhand.
I also wonder if that's going to continue.
Yeah, I am curious about that. It wouldn't stun me if it did. And, I get that optically it is a bit different. It's a bit odd. And I know some people probably feel like she's too involved with that look. But when she explained it, I was like, yeah, that sounds like very, very valuable. And very, very beneficial to her. She's out of practice. She was out of practice on Tuesday, right before the press conference, watching that. Her car was in the parking lot today. Her car was in the parking lot yesterday. Again, she is very 9 to 5-y, if not longer, inside of that building. And then she kind of had a little bit, I don't know if she planned it. She certainly, if whatever, the Colts drew up some PR notes, she certainly followed, I think, a great script, unlike probably her father. She kind of dropped the mic moment late about what it means to her to now be in this position. Mm-hmm. And she basically said, and I guess it's kind of an indirect pot shot at maybe some other, again, ownership groups or new ownership around the league. We didn't make our money via a hedge fund. Mm-hmm. This is our business. And that's probably where I would summarize everything. Like, sure, they might, and I guess they might fall on their face. But this is not some toy. This is not some hobby. This is not something that they're just kind of flying in and, oh, yeah, we'll learn while we own. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, no, they've spent a lot of time trying to learn and absorbing. And now it's their turn. And it's very real to them. Carly, it's been very real to her specifically for years, outside of going to college and a little bit of I think she got into the psychology world a little bit right out of college. This has kind of been her life. And she's what, 40, north of 40 years old. So I thought all in all, they did a really nice job. I thought their experiences, talking about their father and his life and what he meant to them was all, frankly, very touching. I loved the joke at the start of, we thought to honor our dad, we'd be about 30 minutes late. And I mean, they're all very active in the community. Caitlin mentioned, our kids play at, First Baptist. For those unfamiliar, picture, a 4-court gymnasium that's filled with hundreds of kids every weekend. That's where their kids are playing.
At the Pacers game last night?
She was at the Pacers game, yes, indeed, last night. I think they take a very serious commitment to what the horseshoe meant to their dad and what has meant to them. I mean, hell, each of them have 3 horseshoe tattoos. Like, it's just, I think if I were a fan of a team, I would want owners that care and have shown a willingness to learn, absorb, and grow. And I think they all have done that, and especially Carly. So that's probably what stood out to me. Eddie, I know I probably rambled a little bit there, but anything else that you might have heard that I missed? Or I guess there was that quote in there of, we just tell our employees kind of own your role and we'll get out of the way.
I think that's along the Don Shula line of thinking. Like, I work with Eddie White, pretty much every day with the World's Greatest Postgame Show, and he talks about, and we've talked about numerous times, just how this Pacers team, is a collective group and everyone does their job, and that starts at the top with the ownership of not meddling. And the quote that he always says that he cites the Don Shula is like, you let the coaches coach, the players play, the general managers manage, and then you let the owners own. Like, and you just kind of let everyone perform the job and the tasks that they are assigned and hired to do. And to me, that's kind of the vibe that I got from Carly, Irsay, and Caitlin Jackson during their times in the press conference. And it just seems like there's going to be less meddling potentially than there was previously.
Yeah, and I guess I would just add this about the current state.
And also, I think there's, based off just that press conference alone, I think there's probably going to be a little more accountability.
Yes, I would agree on that last part. And I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this, Eddie. I do feel like Chris Ballard is close with the daughters. But again, I think they, especially Carly, is a very show me results and I'll make my decision off of that. I think that's exactly how she's wired from a business standpoint. And if you look at it, the state of the franchise is what? Your longest playoff drought in 30 years. Can you imagine Caitlin Jackson in that building last night, Eddie? Witnessing what a home playoff game looks like? And when's the last time the Colts have had one?
Too long.
So, that I think is very real to them. So I don't think this is I'm not going to want to dip my toes into that water first year as an owner. First off, I think that's a disservice to your fan base to treat it like that. And I really don't think they will. I think there is this thought out there, and honestly, there's probably some evidence behind it, that Jim Irsay's health has impacted in a weird, this might sound weird, it's impacted Chris Ballard. Well, I'm not going to say that word. It has, I think there are some people out there that believe if Jim Irsay was in a better health state in recent years, Chris Ballard would not be here. His ability to execute a GM search could have happened a little bit easierly, if that's even a word, than it did. So, because again, you're trying to explain a resume that doesn't have a lot of explanation behind it.
Yeah.
And Carly Irsay Gordon didn't get up there 9 Januaries ago and say this is the greatest GM hire of the 21st century. So, we'll see how it all plays out. But again, I thought it was a great press conference. I think that'd be a very tough balance to strike about wanting to thank people and honor their dad in a public setting, but then also, try to move on to the business and the immense responsibility that they have there. And I think I've said this before. I've always been very struck by Caitlin from a communicative standpoint. I think she's tremendous. You can kind of tell in that press conference she oftentimes kind of gravitated a little bit towards the mic there. So I'll be curious just from a little bit more in front of the camera how that will be done. It doesn't sound like they're going to be firing up the Twitter account too much there. I can't imagine Carly's tweeted too much in her life. But obviously, we'll wait and see. And, we had a question the other day, Eddie. Like, when do you think the next time we hear from Carly Irsay Gordon is?
Right.
I mean, Jim would talk at training camp, oftentimes during a joint practice, and then Jim would talk with Greg Rakestraw and Rick Venturi in the preseason booth, the final preseason game. Is that something Carly's going to follow? And do we hear from her? Is the next time we hear from her potentially at a firing after the season? Is the next time we hear from her at owners' meetings? Saturday of the draft? What will that cadence be? That might be the biggest difference, honestly. It's just publicly how much we hear from the owner of the Colts.
You can read Kevin Bowen's thoughts by going to 1075thefan.com. It's the third story on the page. The second one is another one from Kevin Bowen, and then the top story is from some schmuck talking about the Pacers. I don't know who that person is, but story number 2. Who?
E.G.?
Eddie Guerrero? Eddie Gill?
I was thinking, who was the guy of the bullpen, the lefty? Eddie Gordado?
That's a deep cut.
Yeah, that is. I think he was on my fantasy team one year.
That's the only reason why you know?
Yeah, pretty much.
Story number 2 on the website that we'll chat about here on Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen is your overall takeaways from minicamp. Obviously, Anthony Richardson. So let's start with Daniel Jones. What were your overall, impressions or things that had you worried?
Yeah, I thought he was solid. I watched him, a handful of practices, I guess, when you added it all up, and I thought he was solid. Nothing too flashy. I thought a little bit more of attempting downfield than maybe some would have thought, and did a really nice job. I thought just kind of throwing it up to Pierce a few times and letting Alec Pierce do what he does seemingly as well as anybody around the league. There was a play at the end of Wednesday's practice where Shane Steichen, it was a 2-minute drill, and they had moved down the field, and they kind of stalled inside the 10, and you can hear Shane's voice above everybody else. Gotta have it. I mean, he's yelling to his offense. Gotta have it. And sure enough, Jones, great anticipatory throw to Michael Pittman Jr., who had not yet gotten open, kind of threw Pittman Jr. open for the touchdown there. I thought that was probably one of their more impressive plays as a starting offense. And I'll continue to say what I've said now since the Richardson news took place last week, Eddie. I expect Daniel Jones to be the week 1 starter. We'll see if that changes come training camp, but right now, that's where I'm at. It sounds like he'll do what pretty much every NFL starting quarterback does and get together with the pass catchers in the offseason, get in some work. The Desmond Ridder thing I thought was interesting that they brought him in as a veteran tryout guy. I've had a question of will they look into a veteran QB if this Richardson thing lingers at all. Ridder did very little in terms of team work. Riley Leonard took pretty much all the second-team reps. Jason Bean maybe a little bit. But we'll see if they bring Ridder onto the 90-man roster. That would take, of course, corresponding roster move with that. But, that's kind of an insurance thing that they need to at least have a sense of, hey, if this thing with Richardson's going to linger, what will it look like behind Daniel Jones? That's probably the main stuff quarterback-wise. Boy, I couldn't believe Desmond Ridder wasn't even on a 90-man roster. I started to do the math, Eddie. I'm like, okay, wait, the Colts have 4 quarterbacks here. 32 times 4 is what?
128.
128 quarterbacks? And he's not one of the 128?
I didn't know if you were waiting for me to say the number or if you were just, dusting off the cobwebs and trying to get the calculator in your brain to go.
I think I was dusting off. You and me right now, neither of us should probably have a math battle based off the sleep we've gotten in the last 24 hours. But, yes, thank you for that quick math. Yeah, I know the Ridder experience hasn't gone well in the NFL, but I was still surprised that he wasn't anywhere. So that'll be something, to keep an eye on. Non-quarterback division. A.D. Mitchell certainly was very consistent when we were out there.
Okay, consistent how? I've seen
converting
some
opportunities thrown to him. I would argue he didn't convert opportunities that came his way for a variety of reasons last season. And I thought, I can probably count, I don't know, he converted, let's see, he was targeted 12 times when we were out there. I bet he converted 9, 10 of them. And I really don't even blame him for the ones he didn't convert necessarily. Whereas last year you'd be like, wait, what a minute. Reggie Wayne is waiting for you when you get to the sideline for a reason there. Now, where does he earn playing time? It sounds like they will carve out some specific things for him. And, I think in a way you almost look at it like, kind of the Pacers. It's like, well, Pittman Jr. and Pierce and this, but it's like, hey, what could they look like in the fourth quarter if you keep them fresh? And does A.D. Mitchell earn that right, I think that would help out your wide receiver core over the course of 17 games. I mean, Tyler Warren doesn't look like a rookie. I mean, he looks like he belongs. Continue to be very steady and had some playmaking within that. Tanner Bortolini, Danny Pinter is definitely a battle. We'll see how that plays out. And Matt Gonzalez is definitely your right guard. You know, Eddie, they exited the spring. Nothing at guard, nothing at linebacker of substance.
I was surprised Jermaine Pratt wasn't heavily considered.
Yeah, and I guess
he could have been, but
that's
we just
probably
not know
everything
that.
offense-wise. So, yeah, let's transition to defense. I mean, if I had to guess, the two linebackers that got the most starting reps in the handful of practices we watched, I would guess it's Cam McGrone, the Lawrence Central product, for those familiar with Indy high school scene.
Yep.
And John Batchy, who they signed, in April? Has Louis Anarumo history in Cincinnati, not really on defense, mainly on special teams. I mean, those two, 48 and 59, those two were playing a ton as the starting linebackers. Zaire Franklin is out of the boot, and then Jalen Carlisle is, of course, recovering from the shoulder. So, linebacker, I'm just they treat linebacker how Max Bowen treats some of his toys. It's like,
happy birthday, Rosie Bowen.
Thank you. Yes, happy birthday, Rosie. I love you a lot. Can't wait for fettuccine Alfredo at Puccini's tonight.
Let's go.
Gosh, it's going to be so electric. I can't wait. It might be better than the Pacer game last night. They just don't love linebacker. And I think Lou has some of that reasoning behind it. Like, to me, Zaire Franklin, and we'll do our indispensable pod probably here in a month. Like, to me, he's one of the most indispensable players in the team. When you start to look at that depth chart.
Not even just depth chart, just the leadership perspective.
Well, that too.
The voice.
Yeah. So, you know, again, we went through the whole offseason and nothing of note there at linebacker. D-line-wise, they were a little banged up. You know, Quiddy was in and out.
Grover was out, right?
Grover, I think, maybe missed 1 or 2 days.
Buckner,
for the most part, was participating. I think Isaiah Land was a little bit banged up. I don't know. I guess now that I play that out.
Ebicom obviously didn't practice, did he?
Yeah, Ebicom. That's great. Yeah, that's a great point. You know, corner, definitely banged up. Jalen Jones missed the last couple weeks with a soft tissue. Juju Brents missed 1 day that we were out there with a groin.
Wait, Juju Brents missed a practice?
I know. Charvarius Ward took a little bit to kind of get fully integrated into the team portions when we were out there. So, you know, I'll definitely kind of wait and see on that corner group. Safety-wise, very consistent with Bynum.
How'd Justin Wally look?
And Nick Cross. You know, Wally is probably the one that they have publicly singled out the most.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the competitive spirit that comes with him.
I saw the highlight of Pierce catching the ball over him with his club.
Yeah, and he creates contested catches. And I think that's a part of what you're asking for at corner.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've said this quite often with the Pacers Thunder series. I'm asking for the Pacers to put the Thunder in the clutch.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that don't follow the NBA closely, the clutch is defined by 5 points or less within 5 minutes, the last 5 minutes of the game.
Yep.
And if I am looking at my cornerback group, I would ask them to put the offense into contested catch situations, not give them easy. And I think way too often under Gus Bradley, they gave them easy. And I think schematically, they won't do that as much. But also, there's some downfield moments where you've got to do that on your own. And I thought Wally, even though it wasn't perfect for him, I thought he did a nice job with that. Now, again, who is the third corner? You know, Ward and Kenny Moore are obvious. Who's the third? Is it Jalen Jones?
I would strongly think so.
That's what I would think. But, again, he missed a couple weeks. You know, is Wally a legit competitor in there? You know, what does Juju Brents look like, you know, if he can string health together? That's probably everything. Schrader's got a booming leg. Probably has a slight lead there. They had 100% attendance. That's probably worth pointing out, considering around the league you didn't have 100% attendance in the mandatory portion.
So Jonathan Taylor was there for all mandatory minicamp?
Jonathan Taylor was there.
It was just OTAs that he was not there for, right?
And he was definitely there for some of them.
Right, but not all of them.
Maybe just 1 week. You know, obviously we focused a lot on Richardson on the last pod, Eddie. I would just add one more thing that I've kind of thought about. I told you this probably 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. I said to you, what worries me about this quarterback competition is this. You have 2 quarterbacks that so far throughout their careers have either been bad, or if you want to be nice, inconsistent. Now, you're telling them to compete with inconsistent reps.
Yep.
So how do either of them get better?
Especially now with Richardson coming off the shoulder.
Well, and this is where the spin cycle can happen. Yes, for Richardson's sake, it sucks. It's awful.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to spin it. For the Daniel Jones' sake, though, now he gets consistent reps.
Yeah.
So he just got, of the 9 practices, 11 on 11, he just got 7 of them. And when they start camp, he'll be QB1, and we'll see how long it takes for Richardson to ramp it up.
That's what I was trying to get to here is that, and I know we're short on time, KB, so we got to get to these Twitter questions, but with Richardson missing time, do they try to give him extra reps in training camp to make up for that lost time?
But again, giving extra reps for a guy that just got a dead arm.
I know.
How do you weigh that?
Yeah.
So if you want to spin it positively for Daniel Jones,
and that's even assuming he's out there on the first training camp practice.
Exactly, which is still a major question. So, if you are in the, hey, you wanted to see one quarterback get better, and you don't care about, long-term future, fourth overall pick investment, Daniel Jones just got a good amount of starting work.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought is to start things at Grand Park, he will get a good amount of starting work. Now, again, how long will that continue? And there's going to come a point in time where Shane Steichen might have a decision to make.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Richardson is not ramping it up until August 1.
Yeah.
Well, that first preseason game is August 7th. And that first regular season game is September 7th.
Yep.
If I were head coach, ideally, I'd probably want to name a starter by midway point of August at the latest.
Yeah.
So these are all things that, I definitely have thought about here. So unless you got anything else, Eddie, let's get to Twitter time.
Joel, Z-Palm, and Jamie all asking similar questions, so they are all looped together. KB, what do you make of the Morocco Brown news? The phrase parting ways, the timing of this just hours after the AR re-aggravation news, and the timing of this happening after the draft makes them feel like it wasn't planned for long. It's all pretty weird, but maybe the Colts and weird are synonymous.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions. Clearly, you just referenced it about Morocco Brown. I guess you'd call him, like third in line? I don't know, Ballard, Ed Dodds, him.
Yep.
Yeah, it sounds like contract ran out. And I guess you can look at it two ways. Certainly, he had a lot of ties to Anthony Richardson and was a big Anthony Richardson supporter. Ed Dodds, for example, I don't think I would call that at all. But I don't know if I necessarily look at it like Richardson has not been good through 2 years, so Morocco Brown is gone. I don't think that's necessarily like the 1,000% answer here. I think you have to start to look at this a multitude of ways. If Morocco Brown's contract is up, why would he want to come back here if Chris Ballard is on the hot seat?
Mm-hmm. Right.
When you're in a scouting role, these contracts typically run around the draft cycle. So with this draft cycle now done, he could probably read the writing on the wall. If I'm going to try and re-up here with Indy, I might just be gone next year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if there's another, great example of it elsewhere in the organization, but that's a very real thing you have to look at of who are you hitching your wagons to? I've really been surprised from a scouting standpoint. I know it's kind of a different angle, Eddie. There hasn't been more turnover. Ballard has kept a lot of Grigson scouts and honestly some late Polian scouts, but a lot of Grigson scouts. I mean, I can think of numerous people in that scouting department there. So I don't know. Maybe it is this, hey, you talked to send to Richardson, we're cutting ties with you. But also, if I'm in that building right now, hitching your wagons to certain people, I think is a risky business.
And perhaps maybe it's time for him, or maybe he looked at it in this manner of wanting to step away for a bit and just kind of reassess how he evaluates players because...
Yeah, I don't know if he signed anywhere or what, but yeah.
I don't think he has yet. I haven't seen his name anywhere. Drew is up next. KB, what are your expectations or ideas about the new face of the franchise in Carly Irsay Gordon? Do you see her as trying to keep up with her father's legacy, as almost being stubborn about Chris Ballard being the best GM? Or does she look at this front office and clear house and start fresh from the ground up? And I also want to make note that didn't she reference in there that you two used to work together at one point?
She did reference that. And again, my takeaway from those years would be she's super results oriented, and she is not going to be as emotionally driven in decision making as her father was. Again, make decisions more with the head versus the heart. You didn't hear any Michael Jordan misses shots talking about Ballard. And frankly, I just don't think we're going to hear much from her. I could be wrong, but I don't think we're going to get that, which, maybe it's a slight bummer if you're a fan. Maybe some fans thought Jim Irsay took it too far. You could look at that probably in multiple directions. But I guess to answer the question itself, no, I don't think this is Chris Ballard coast into your 10th year as GM. I'd be very surprised if that's how it's being viewed. I mean, I think she likes Chris Ballard. I think the daughters do like her, but do like him. But I mean, you can't ignore the results, and the results are what the results are, and it's a pretty ugly time, frankly, for the Colts fan base. And I'm like half joking, half serious with the whole Pacers thing. Like, those daughters are living it firsthand. Mm-hmm. They're living it with their children, 10 of them, amongst the 3 of them. They're living, I mean, right now, Eddie Garrison, you go into public out here, it is a Pacers love fest. I
thought the Super Bowl was in town last night.
It is incredible.
Nice job, KB.
Spill some water.
Nice job. You got it all over the buttons.
It's incredible seeing how much Pacer gear is everywhere as I try to clean up the water.
2 questions left. A longer one from Craig. You mentioned, KB, after every year that the last team standing in the playoffs are the ones with stud quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, etc. Please explain to Craig, like he is 5, what the heck the Colts management is thinking with Daniel Jones. If the Colts make the playoffs, they will not go far, as Daniel Jones is not top tier to get them that far. He seems like he is, quote, good enough to get them 8-9 wins, putting them once again in the middle of the draft, and not able to draft the top 5 to go get that, quote unquote, stud quarterback that could take them back to the Super Bowl. Why not roll with AR and random backups? If it goes bad, it really goes bad, and they can draft top 5. If it goes well, they do have a chance at the Super Bowl. The approach with Daniel Jones seems like the best way management has to protect their jobs. What am I missing?
Yeah, I guess I would look at it as, Craig, you're trying to save your job. I mean, basically the Colts look at the Giants personnel and they say, look what Daniel Jones had to work with.
Can you name one wide receiver that he had there other than like Darius Slayton?
Right. Obviously, Neighbors came very, very late and all that. So I think they view it as, again, can we keep the ship a little bit more afloat with him? And we have personnel that we feel like can help him do that. Now, I understand where, there's a section of the fan base that obviously comes from the old tank debate. And, I say tank, it might not be full throttle tank, but hey, why be stuck in purgatory? If you're going to lose. Obviously, the people in that building are not going to view it. And look, CJ Stroud's got what? Some sort of elbow? I mean, it's the most important injury in the division. And if that all of a sudden lingers or he gets hurt, then you got a decision to make. And all of a sudden, the AFC South could be very open. So I understand where you're coming from on that, but obviously you have to also put yourself in the organization's shoes. And they feel like they can win with just a little steadier play. I mean, how many games they won last year? 7, 8?
8. They were 8-9, yeah.
Yeah, 8-9. So if you got steadier quarterback play, would you be 10-7?
Could they get to 11 wins?
I think that's kind of how they view it.
Yeah. Last Twitter question is from Rick. Is it out of the realm of possibilities where Anthony Richardson becomes our / for those that don't know, Cordell Stewart, meaning he can play quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, or running back? I know there's a handful of gadget players in the league today, but none as athletic or as strong as AR. Your thoughts?
Well, Eddie, I don't think there's any easy way to say this without mentioning his current state. He's hurt, correct?
Yep.
When's the last time he's been hit? 7 months ago? 6.5 months ago? Yeah, now you're going to go tell him to play a contact position? That's probably not going to end well. The Colts should be great in short yardage, though. Warren, we might have seen a Warren interesting play during minicamp. So, yes, the Warren stuff. The
Taylor.
Obviously, Daniel Jones can make a play with his legs as well. So, Yeah, I think they should be very good in short yardage. And
So-
probably won't need to run Richardson into the ground if they felt like they needed to.
What's coming up on 1075thefan.com, KB, as we near/wait for training camp?
Yeah, I'll probably get a 53-man roster at some point, kind of project that after this. 10 takeaways from camp, we'll do that, or from the offseason program, probably do that early next week. So that kind of maps out the cycle. We'll continue to have consistent content up on the website, 3-4 articles a week here during the summer months, and we'll maybe not be every 7 days podcast-wise, but we'll sprinkle a few in here before, again, July 22nd is report day. He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Pacers in 6. Colts Corner. Kevin Bowen signing off.